October 2019, the air felt thick and heavy in the old empty Blackwood coal mine, 30 miles from Pike County, Alabama. Sheriff Deputy Marcus Tanner shined his flashlight through the darkness that had been there for many years, lighting up something nobody was supposed to find. "Control, I need help at the old Blackwood place, and send someone from the coroner's office." His voice bounced off the wet stone walls. What started as a normal patrol after hearing reports of teenagers sneaking around had just turned into something completely different. Something that would finally answer questions that had bothered Pike County for 45 years. 2 sets of human bones hidden deep inside a closed-off part of the mine, and close by a special silver necklace with the letters SM. The same necklace Sarah Martinez was wearing the night she disappeared along with her identical twin sister Rebecca in 1974. For almost 50 years, the disappearance of the Martinez twins had been nothing but questions with no answers. 2 happy young women who simply vanished one fall evening after finishing their work shifts at Murphy's Diner. 2 empty chairs at every family holiday. 2 bedroom doors their mother could never make herself close until now. Before we continue this shocking story, take a second to hit subscribe and like this video. Your support helps bring these forgotten stories to light, and the algorithm gods will make sure you don't miss any future uploads. The discovery at Blackwood Mine wasn't just the end of a missing persons case. It was the first piece in a chain of events that would reveal many years of secrets buried in this small Alabama town. Because when police finally identified a suspect and arrested them in 2019, it wasn't a stranger or an unknown criminal. It was someone the town knew, someone they trusted, someone who had lived among them for 45 years carrying this terrible secret. The Martinez case is more than just a solved mystery. It shows the determination of a family who never stopped searching, detectives who refused to let the case file collect dust, and new crime-solving science that finally gave voice to victims who had been silenced for so long. This is also a story about a divided town. When the twins first disappeared in 1974, suspicion spread through Pike County like wildfire. Neighbors blamed neighbors. Families stopped talking to each other. The search for the Martinez sisters showed the cracks running beneath the surface of small-town America. Cracks that would break wide open when the truth finally came out 45 years later. What makes this case especially haunting is how close the answer was all along. The main suspect had been questioned in the first investigation, but managed to slip through. For many years, this person went to community gatherings for the missing twins, looked their parents in the eye, and kept up a fake appearance of innocence while hiding unimaginable secrets. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. I'm always interested to see how far these stories travel and how they connect us across distances. Tonight, we'll walk through the events of October 1974, trace the many years of searching for answers, and reveal the amazing breakthrough that finally brought closure to one of Alabama's most puzzling cold cases. This is a story of loss, determination, lies, and finally, justice that was delayed but not denied. Pike County, Alabama, in 1974 was a place where everyone knew everyone, or at least thought they did. With just over 25,000 people scattered across rolling farmland and small towns, it was a community where doors stayed unlocked and children played outside until the streetlights came on. The county seat of Troy, with its modest downtown square, was the heart of local business and gossip. The early 1970s had brought changes to this corner of Alabama. The civil rights movement had left its mark, though integration moved forward with the slow pace typical of rural southern communities. The Vietnam War had taken the lives of 17 Pike County boys and returned many more forever changed. Money worries loomed as factory jobs began their slow move elsewhere. Though the local coal industry still provided steady if dangerous, work. Murphy's Diner sat at the corner of Main and Walnut Streets in Troy, its neon sign casting a warm glow over the sidewalk each evening. The diner was a community meeting place where farmers discussed crop prices over morning coffee. High school students crowded into booths after football games, and night shift workers grabbed late meals before heading to the mines or the textile plant. It was at Murphy's that Sarah and Rebecca Martinez had found work shortly after graduating from Pike County High School in 1972. The identical twins were impossible to miss in a town where Hispanic families were few and far between. Robert Martinez had moved his family from Arizona to Alabama in 1965 when the twins were 13. taking a supervisor job at the Blackwood coal mine that offered better pay and benefits than he could find back west. The Martinez twins shared more than just their striking appearance. Both stood 5'4" with shiny black hair that fell past their shoulders, warm brown eyes, and smiles that customers at Murphy's said lit up the whole place. But those who knew them well could spot the differences. Sarah, older by 7 minutes, wore her hair parted on the left and spoke with quiet confidence. She dreamed of becoming a nurse and had been saving money for nursing school. Rebecca, Becca to friends and family, parted her hair on the right and had a more outgoing personality. She loved music, played guitar at local church gatherings, and talked about moving to Nashville someday. Those girls were inseparable, remembered Donna Wilkins, who managed Murphy's Diner in 1974. They worked the same shifts, shared a car, even dressed alike some days. But they had their own minds about things. Sarah was the planner, always thinking 3 steps ahead. Becca lived more in the moment. October 17, 1974 began as a normal Thursday. The twins arrived for their afternoon shift at Murphy's at 2 p.m., wearing matching blue uniforms with white aprons. The diner was busy that day. A regional sales meeting at the farm equipment dealer had brought in extra customers, and the high school had gotten out early for teacher training, security camera footage. Grainy and black and white but kept as evidence, shows the twins working their section. Sarah carefully filling salt shakers while Rebecca chatted with regular customers at the counter. At 8:07 p.m., they clocked out, collected their tips, and waved goodbye to the night manager. "See you tomorrow," Sarah called out. The last words anyone at Murphy's would ever hear her speak. The twins' normal walk home took them down Main Street, past the courthouse square, and then 5 blocks east along Pine Street to the modest neighborhood where the Martinez family lived. The route was well lit and familiar. They'd walked it hundreds of times before. On that particular evening, people who saw them reported the twins stopped at Henderson's pharmacy to buy a birthday card for their mother, whose birthday was the following week. The clerk at Henderson's, Judith Abernathy, was the last known person to see the Martinez twins alive. They seemed in good spirits, she told investigators. Sarah asked if we had any cards with roses on them. Their mother loved roses. They left around 8:30, heading east on Pine. The distance from Henderson's pharmacy to the Martinez home was about a 12-minute walk. When the twins hadn't arrived home by 9:15 p.m., their mother, Maria, began to worry. By 10 p.m., she had called Murphy's Diner and learned her daughters had left hours earlier. By 11 p.m., Robert Martinez was driving the streets of Troy, looking for any sign of his daughters. At midnight, the Martinez family reported Sarah and Rebecca missing to the Pike County Sheriff's Department. "We didn't take it seriously at first," admitted former Deputy Sheriff Calvin Brooks in a 2020 interview. 2 adult women missing for a few hours. "We thought they might have met up with friends or gone to a late movie. We told the family to wait until morning. But morning came with no sign of the twins. No calls, no messages. Their beds had not been slept in. By noon on October 18th, the Martinez family's worry had spread to the community. Friends, neighbors, and co-workers gathered at the Martinez home, offering support and organizing search parties. The sheriff's department, now understanding how serious the situation was, began questioning potential witnesses and tracing the twins' last known movements. The search grew quickly. Volunteers searched every inch of the route between Murphy's Diner and the Martinez home. They checked abandoned buildings, drainage ditches, and wooded areas on the edge of town. The local radio station interrupted regular programming with updates and requests for information. It was unlike anything I'd seen before, remembered Troy resident Margaret Simmons. Everyone stopped what they were doing to help search. Men called in sick to work. Women brought food to the volunteers. The high school football game was postponed. Finding those girls became the only thing that mattered. By the 3rd day, the FBI had joined the investigation. Agents questioned the twins' friends, co-workers, and people they knew. They looked through the sisters' bedroom, finding nothing out of place. Their savings books still in their dresser drawers. Their few pieces of jewelry untouched, except for the silver necklace Sarah usually wore every day. The most confusing part of the case was the complete lack of evidence. No signs of a struggle were found along their walking route. No suspicious vehicles had been reported in the area. The twins had simply vanished into the fall evening, leaving no trace behind. It was as if they'd been plucked from the earth, Robert Martinez told reporters a week after the disappearance. his voice breaking. My girls wouldn't run away. They wouldn't leave their mother. Something happened to them and someone knows what it is. As days turned to weeks, the search continued, but hope faded. Posters with the twins' photographs appeared in store windows throughout Pike County and neighboring counties. Their smiling faces looked out from the front page of the Troy Messenger newspaper for 7 days in a row, a local record. The moment the Martinez twins were reported missing marked the beginning of Pike County's lost innocence. Doors that had never been locked were now secured with deadbolts. Children who had roamed freely were kept under watchful eyes. A community that had once been proud of its safety now had an unseen threat in the knowledge that 2 of their own had vanished without a trace. The Pike County Sheriff's Department of 1974 was not well prepared to handle a case this big. With a total force of just 11 deputies serving the entire county, their experience was mostly limited to drunk driving arrests, family disputes, and occasional property crimes. Sheriff Walter Donovan, who had served 3 terms and was known more for his political connections than his detective work, found himself thrust into a national spotlight as the Martinez case captured media attention. "We're following all available leads," became Donovan's repeated phrase at daily press meetings, though former deputies would later admit the investigation lacked both direction and skill in those crucial early days. The first 48 hours after the twins' disappearance produced little physical evidence. Deputies searched the route between Murphy's Diner and the Martinez home, finding nothing more suspicious than a thrown-away hair ribbon near the corner of Pine and Elm Streets. The ribbon, blue with white polka dots, was first thought to belong to one of the twins but was later determined to have no connection to the case. Without a crime scene, investigators focused on establishing a timeline and identifying potential witnesses. This effort produced the case's first important lead: a blue pickup truck seen sitting near Henderson's pharmacy around the time the twins would have been passing by. 3 separate witnesses mentioned the vehicle: an elderly man walking his dog, a teenage couple sitting on a nearby porch, and the night janitor at the First Baptist Church. All described a mid-1960s model Ford pickup with a dented right fender and a partial license plate containing the numbers 7 and 4. None could clearly identify the driver, though the teenage boy thought it might have been a man wearing a cap. This blue truck became the investigation's first focus. A list was made of all blue Ford pickups registered in Pike County and surrounding areas, 127 vehicles in total. Deputies began the difficult process of finding each one, questioning owners, and checking for signs of recent cleaning or damage repair. The truck's owner was identified on October 25th, 8 days after the disappearance. James Whitley, a 42-year-old mechanic who worked at the Texaco station 2 blocks from Murphy's Diner, admitted to being in the area that evening but denied any involvement with the twins' disappearance. "I was having engine trouble," Whitley told investigators, stopped to let it cool down, then headed straight home. His wife supported his story, claiming he arrived home by 9 p.m. With no evidence to prove otherwise and no legal grounds for a search warrant, investigators were forced to accept Whitley's explanation, though he remained on their informal suspect list. As the investigation continued, 3 additional persons of interest appeared: Victor Ramirez, a 27-year-old distant cousin of the Martinez family, who had visited from Arizona 2 weeks before the disappearance. Ramirez had reportedly made romantic advances toward Sarah, which she had rejected. He claimed to have returned to Phoenix 3 days before the twins vanished, a claim verified by his employer's time cards, though questions about the reliability of those records would come up years later. Thomas Blackwell, the 56-year-old owner of Blackwell Mining Company, which operated several coal mines in the area, including the one where Robert Martinez worked. Anonymous tips suggested Blackwell had been seen arguing with Robert Martinez the week before the disappearance, reportedly over safety concerns Martinez had raised. Blackwell denied any connection to the case and pointed to his presence at a business dinner in Birmingham, the night of October 17th, an alibi confirmed by multiple witnesses. Daniel Cooper, a 31-year-old former boyfriend of Rebecca Martinez. Their relationship had ended 6 months earlier, reportedly on bad terms. Cooper had no alibi for the night in question, but cooperated fully with investigators, even volunteering for a lie detector test, which he passed. No evidence linked him to the disappearance. By early November, the investigation had stalled. The FBI, which had initially provided significant help, began reducing its involvement as more pressing cases demanded attention. Local law enforcement continued to follow up on tips and leads, but with diminishing results. The lack of physical evidence hurt the investigation from the start. No crime scene meant no fingerprints, no fibers, no blood evidence, nothing that could point clearly to a suspect or even confirm a crime had occurred. The twins' bedroom revealed nothing unusual. Their personal belongings remained untouched. The only notable absence was Sarah's silver necklace, which she had been wearing the night they disappeared. Witness testimonies, initially promising, began to contradict each other as memories faded or were influenced by media coverage. The teenage couple who had reported seeing the blue pickup later disagreed about its exact location. The pharmacy clerk, Judith Abernathy, initially stated the twins left around 8:30 p.m., but later said it might have been closer to 8:15 p.m., a difference that significantly affected the timeline. Most problematic were the sightings that began to pour in from across the southeast. The Martinez twins were reportedly spotted at a gas station in Georgia, a bus terminal in Tennessee, a restaurant in Mississippi. Each sighting diverted precious resources as investigators were required to follow up, only to find dead ends. "It's like chasing ghosts," one frustrated deputy told a reporter off the record. "Everyone wants to help, but half these sightings are just people's imaginations running wild." The case might have kept momentum had it not been for the Harmon County bank robbery on December 3, 1974, the largest heist in Alabama history at that time. With 3 people dead and over $200,000 missing, law enforcement resources throughout the region were redirected to the manhunt for the bank robbers. The Martinez case, with its lack of solid leads, was quietly made less of a priority. By Christmas 1974, the daily briefings had stopped. The volunteer search parties had disbanded. The posters of the smiling twins began to yellow and curl at the edges. The case wasn't officially closed. It would remain active on the books for many years, but the intense investigative effort had wound down to occasional follow-ups on new tips, most of which led nowhere. Several factors contributed to the case going cold. The limited crime-solving abilities of the era meant that potentially crucial evidence went uncollected or unanalyzed. The rural setting, with its vast areas of woodland and abandoned mining operations, made thorough searches nearly impossible. The lack of security cameras along the twins' route home, with the exception of the single camera at Murphy's Diner, meant there was no visual record of their movements or potential kidnappers. Perhaps most importantly, the investigation suffered from tunnel vision focused on the blue pickup truck and the initial persons of interest. Investigators may have overlooked other possibilities. Later reviews of the case files would reveal that several potentially relevant reports, including one about an unfamiliar station wagon seen near the Martinez home that evening, were filed away without thorough follow-up. As 1974 gave way to 1975, the disappearance of Sarah and Rebecca Martinez changed from breaking news to unsolved mystery to local legend. Parents used their story to warn children about walking alone after dark. Anniversary articles appeared in the local paper each October. The Martinez family continued their private search, but the official investigation had effectively gone dormant. What time is it where you're watching? Let me know in the comments below. Day or night, someone somewhere is still searching for answers in cases just like this one. In the Martinez household, time stopped on October 17, 1974. The family calendar remained turned to that month for years. The day circled in red ink, a silent reminder of the moment their world shattered. For Robert and Maria Martinez and their 2 younger children, Miguel and Lucia, life became divided into 2 clear periods: before the disappearance and after. Robert Martinez had always been a man defined by quiet strength. Standing 5'8" with rough hands and a weathered face that showed years of outdoor work, he had built a reputation at Blackwell Mining as a reliable supervisor who put safety above production quotas. Born in Tucson to parents who had crossed the border from Mexico in the 1930s, Robert had worked since age 14, eventually saving enough to move his growing family to Alabama for better opportunities. "My father was the kind of man who fixed things," Miguel Martinez remembered in a 2220 interview. "If something broke, he'd repair it. If there was a problem, he'd solve it. When my sisters vanished, it was the first time I ever saw him face something he couldn't fix. and it nearly destroyed him. 3 weeks after Sarah and Rebecca disappeared, Robert took an indefinite leave from the mine. What began as a temporary break to help with the search became a permanent departure from his career. Using the family's modest savings and selling their second car, Robert transformed the garage into a makeshift command center for his own investigation. Maps of Pike County covered the walls. Red pins marking every location searched, blue pins showing reported sightings, yellow pins highlighting areas still to be explored. Filing cabinets held carefully organized notes on every person questioned, every lead followed, every dead end encountered. A dedicated phone line, the number distributed on homemade flyers throughout Alabama and neighboring states, rang directly to this garage headquarters. Robert's days followed a grueling routine. Mornings began at dawn with physical searches of areas overlooked by official efforts, abandoned buildings, remote creek beds, overgrown hunting trails. Afternoons were spent following up on tips, questioning potential witnesses, and coordinating with the network of volunteers who continued to help long after official search parties disbanded. Evenings were dedicated to updating his files and planning the next day's efforts. He slept maybe 4 hours a night, Lucia Martinez said. Sometimes I'd wake up at 2 a.m. and find him at the kitchen table studying maps or reading books about investigation techniques. He taught himself to think like a detective because he believed the police had given up. Robert's dedication came at a steep cost. His health got worse as stress and exhaustion took their toll. By 1976, his hair had turned completely gray. By 1980, he had developed a heart condition that doctors blamed directly on chronic stress. Yet he refused to slow down, driven by a father's unshakable determination to find his children. While Robert channeled his grief into relentless action, Maria Martinez turned inward, finding comfort in faith and the unshakable belief that her daughters would return. A devoted Catholic, Maria attended Mass daily, lighting candles for Sarah and Rebecca and spending hours in prayer. The family's living room became a shrine of sorts. Photographs of the twins at various ages arranged around a central portrait, taken just months before they vanished. Most touching was Maria's evening ritual. Each night at 8:45 p.m., the approximate time the twins should have arrived home, she would set 2 places at the dinner table, complete with plates of food that would remain untouched until morning. She would then sit by the front window, watching the street until midnight or later. "My mother never said they were dead," Miguel explained. Not once in 45 years did those words cross her lips. She would say they were missing or away but never gone forever. She kept their bedroom exactly as they left it. Clothes in the closet, books on the shelves, beds made with fresh sheets changed weekly. This unwavering hope sustained Maria but isolated her from much of the community. Well-meaning friends who suggested memorial services or other forms of closure were politely but firmly turned away. Invitations to social events went unanswered. Gradually, Maria's world shrank to the boundaries of her home, where she could maintain the belief that her daughters might walk through the door at any moment. For Miguel and Lucia Martinez, age 15 and 12 when their sisters disappeared, the aftermath brought a different kind of struggle. Overnight, they lost not only their siblings but in many ways their parents as well. Dad was physically absent, always searching, Lucia remembered. Mom was emotionally absent, lost in her grief and hope. We had to grow up fast, taking care of ourselves and each other while trying to support our parents. School became particularly challenging. In a small town where everyone knew their story, Miguel and Lucia faced constant reminders of their family tragedy. Some classmates avoided them, unsure what to say. Others asked invasive questions fueled by rumors and speculation. Teachers alternated between excessive leniency and concerned oversight. Miguel responded by withdrawing socially, focusing intensely on school as an escape. By his senior year, he rarely spoke of his sisters, throwing himself into college applications with single-minded focus. He would eventually leave Pike County for college in California, returning only for brief visits. Lucia took a different path, becoming her parents' emotional support and the family's public face. She attended the annual candlelight gatherings, spoke to reporters on anniversaries, and maintained connections with the volunteer network. After high school, she chose to remain in Troy, taking classes at the local community college while living at home. "I couldn't leave them," she explained. "Someone had to remember that life had to go on, even while we kept searching." The extended Martinez family scattered across Arizona and New Mexico provided financial support when possible, and made regular visits, especially during holidays. These visits brought temporary relief but also painful reminders of the family's broken state. Empty chairs at Thanksgiving dinner. Missing faces in Christmas photographs. Birthday celebrations for the twins held year after year in their absence. Robert's brother Carlos moved to Troy in 1977, partly to help with the ongoing search and partly to provide his brother with the emotional support he desperately needed. Carlos took over the family's mounting medical bills and helped maintain the house when repairs were neglected. Robert would have searched until his dying breath, Carlos said, and Maria would have waited just as long. Their devotion to their daughters was both beautiful and heartbreaking to witness. As the years passed, the Martinez family's struggle became part of Pike County's collective identity. Their story was told to each new generation. Their unwavering commitment in the face of overwhelming odds earned them a unique place in the community's heart. Even those who believed the twins were long dead respected the family's refusal to give up hope. If you're finding this story as heartbreaking as I did, make sure you're subscribed to stay updated on more cases like this. These families deserve to have their stories told, and your support helps ensure these victims are never forgotten. Pike County changed dramatically in the many years following the Martinez twins' disappearance. The sleepy rural community of 1974 gradually gave way to suburban development as Montgomery's urban sprawl extended southward. By the 1990s, a new 4-lane highway connected Troy to the state capital, bringing chain stores, fast food restaurants, and housing developments that forever changed the county's character. Murphy's Diner closed in 1986, replaced by a series of businesses, a video rental store, a tanning salon, and eventually a cell phone store. Henderson's Pharmacy was absorbed by a national drugstore chain. The Courthouse Square, once the vibrant center of community life, struggled to compete with a shopping mall built on the edge of town in 1992. The Blackwell Mining Company stopped operations in 1983 because of falling coal prices and rising safety concerns. The mines that had provided jobs for generations of Pike County residents, including Robert Martinez, were sealed and abandoned, slowly reclaimed by nature as plants covered the scars left on the landscape. Through these changes, the Martinez case remained an unhealed wound in the community's mind. Each transformation of the physical landscape seemed to erase another potential clue, another connection to that October night in 1974. Every time they tore down an old building or paved over a field, said Calvin Brooks, the former deputy who had been among the first responders when the twins were reported missing, I wondered if we were destroying evidence. The town was moving on, but the case was standing still. The investigation wasn't entirely dormant during these many years. Every 5 years, like clockwork, media attention would return around the anniversary of the disappearance. These periodic spotlights typically created new tips, most proving fruitless, but occasionally substantial enough to warrant renewed investigation. In 1979, the case received its first major review when Sheriff Donovan lost his re-election bid to Raymond Tucker, a former state trooper who had campaigned on a promise to solve the county's most notorious cold case. Tucker assembled a task force that spent 6 months re-examining evidence and re-questioning witnesses. Their efforts produced a new person of interest, a former carnival worker with a history of violence against women who had been passing through Pike County in October 1974. However, the suspect died in a prison fight in Georgia before investigators could question him. The 1980s brought advances in investigative techniques that prompted another review. In 1984, FBI profilers created a psychological assessment of the likely criminal, suggesting the twins' disappearance was probably the work of someone familiar with the area who had specifically targeted the sisters rather than a crime of opportunity. This profile narrowed the focus to local residents with connections to the Martinez family or Murphy's Diner, but produced no breakthrough. The arrival of DNA analysis in criminal investigations sparked hope in 1994 when Sheriff's Department officials announced they would re-examine physical evidence using these new techniques. Unfortunately, the limited evidence collected in 1974 had been improperly stored, making most samples degraded beyond usefulness. The hair ribbon found near the twins' walking route, long suspected to be unrelated to the case, was confirmed to have no connection to either sister. Cold cases are always challenging, but this one was particularly difficult. explained Detective Margaret Lawson, who led the 1994 review. We had no crime scene, minimal physical evidence, and witnesses whose memories had been clouded by time and media coverage. We were essentially starting from scratch 20 years. After the fact, the new millennium brought fresh eyes to the case when the Alabama Bureau of Investigation established a cold case unit in 2002. The Martinez disappearance was among the first files reviewed. Investigators digitized the original case notes, created computer models of possible scenarios, and established a dedicated tip line. For a brief period, it seemed the technological advances might finally break the case open. The most promising lead came in 2008 when construction workers preparing to build a new neighborhood on the edge of Troy uncovered what appeared to be human remains. For 3 agonizing days, the Martinez family waited as forensic anthropologists examined the bones, only to learn they were Native American remains dating back centuries. By the 2010s, the case had taken on an almost mythical quality in Pike County. Younger residents grew up hearing about the Martinez twins without any personal connection to the events. Urban legends sprouted around the disappearance. Tales of ghostly twin figures seen walking along Pine Street on fall evenings, or mysterious voices heard near the sealed mine entrances. For the Martinez family, however, there was nothing mythical about their continued suffering. Robert's health declined steadily, with multiple heart attacks in 2005 and 2012 leaving him increasingly frail. Maria's unwavering hope never dimmed, though her ritual of setting places at the dinner table eventually reduced to special occasions only. Miguel established a successful engineering career in California, visiting less frequently as the years passed. Only Lucia remained in Troy, serving as caretaker for her aging parents while maintaining the family's modest efforts to keep the case alive in public memory. What's the weather like where you are today? The Martinez family endured 45 years of changing seasons without answers. Through scorching Alabama summers, crisp fall evenings like the one when the twins vanished, winter holidays marked by empty chairs, and spring days that brought renewal to everything except their hopes for resolution. October 12th, 2019. A crisp fall Saturday, almost identical to the one 45 years earlier when Sarah and Rebecca Martinez vanished without a trace. Deputy Marcus Tanner wasn't thinking about the Martinez case as he responded to reports of teenagers trespassing at the abandoned Blackwood mine. At 32, Tanner was too young to remember the original disappearance. To him, it was just another local legend, a story told around campfires to scare children. The Blackwood mine had been officially closed since 1983, its entrances supposedly sealed with concrete barriers and chain-link fencing. But many years of neglect had allowed nature to reclaim the area, and determined trespassers had found ways to access the maze of tunnels beneath. Local teenagers considered it a rite of passage to venture into the mine's entrance chamber, leaving behind empty beer cans and graffiti as evidence of their exploits. Tanner expected another routine call. Issue warnings, take away alcohol, and send the kids home with a stern lecture about the dangers of abandoned mines. What he found instead would finally break open Pike County's most notorious cold case. I noticed something odd about one of the side tunnels, Tanner later testified. There was a barrier that looked newer than the others, not concrete like the main entrance, but a wall of rocks and timber that didn't match the surrounding area. It seemed deliberately built, not a natural cave-in. Curious, Tanner used his flashlight to examine the barrier more closely. Between the rocks he spotted what appeared to be fabric, weathered and faded but clearly man-made. Calling for backup, Tanner carefully removed several stones, revealing what lay hidden behind the makeshift wall. The remains of 2 people positioned side by side in a small space carved into the tunnel wall. Fragments of clothing still clung to the bones, remnants of what forensic analysts would later confirm were identical blue diner uniforms, and there, partially buried in the disturbed soil, a tarnished silver necklace with the letters SM carved on its face. I knew immediately what I'd found, Tanner said. Everyone who grows up in Pike County knows about the Martinez twins. I'd seen their pictures 100 times in the Historical Society Museum. Finding them was like coming face to face with local history. The discovery site was immediately secured as multiple agencies descended on the abandoned mine: the Pike County Sheriff's Department, The Alabama Bureau of Investigation and the FBI established a joint task force within hours. The mine entrance became the center of the most significant forensic operation in county history. Recovering the remains proved challenging. The mine's unstable condition required structural engineers to reinforce the tunnels before evidence collection could begin. A team of forensic anthropologists from the University of Alabama supervised the careful excavation, documenting the position of every bone, fabric fragment, and potential evidence before anything was moved. The breakthrough that had escaped investigators for nearly half a century had finally arrived. But identifying the remains was only the beginning. The crucial questions remained. Who had hidden the Martinez twins in this remote section of the mine? And how had they remained undiscovered for so long? The first piece of the puzzle came from the mine's historical records. The section where the remains were found had been part of an expansion project abandoned in early 1974 due to safety concerns. According to company documents, that particular tunnel had been officially sealed in March 1974, 7 months before the twins disappeared. This explained why searchers hadn't checked the area in 1974. It was assumed to be inaccessible. Someone with knowledge of the mine's layout would have known about this hidden space, explained FBI Special Agent Diana Reeves, who joined the investigation. They would have known it was sealed off on company maps but still physically accessible. If you knew how to get there, this revelation immediately narrowed the suspect pool to individuals familiar with Blackwell mining operations, former employees, contractors, or others with specialized knowledge of the mine's geography. The forensic examination of the remains produced the case's next critical breakthrough. Advanced DNA analysis confirmed what the silver necklace had already suggested. The remains were indeed those of Sarah and Rebecca Martinez, but it was the manner of death that provided the most significant clue. Both sisters had suffered similar fractures to the skull, consistent with blunt force trauma. The medical examiner determined these injuries were the likely cause of death, inflicted by a heavy object with a flat striking surface, possibly a hammer or similar tool. More importantly, microscopic analysis of the bone fractures indicated the fatal blows had been delivered from behind, suggesting the twins had been attacked unexpectedly, possibly while walking. The positioning of the remains told us something important, Dr. Eleanor Simmons, the forensic anthropologist who led the examination, explained. They weren't simply dumped in the mine. They were deliberately arranged side by side, almost as if resting peacefully. Their hands appeared to have been placed together. This suggests the person who did this knew them personally. There was a level of care in how they were positioned that you don't typically see in stranger murders, perhaps. The most crucial evidence came from technology that hadn't existed in 1974. Soil samples collected from around the remains contained microscopic fibers and trace elements that modern forensic techniques could analyze with extraordinary precision. Blue cotton fibers matched the twins' Murphy's Diner uniforms, confirming they had been brought to the mine directly after their disappearance without changing clothes. Pollen analysis indicated a fall deposition consistent with their October disappearance. But it was the presence of a specific type of industrial lubricant, one used exclusively by Blackwell Mining for their equipment in the 1970s, that provided the most significant lead. This particular lubricant contained a unique chemical signature, as the company had used a special formula. More importantly, access to this lubricant was restricted to specific personnel, primarily maintenance workers and equipment. Operators. Cross-referencing employment records from 1974 with the list of persons of interest from the original investigation produced a name that had appeared only briefly in the initial case files. Howard Keller. Keller had worked as a maintenance supervisor at Blackwell Mining in 1974, responsible for equipment repairs and tunnel safety inspections. Then 35 years old, he had been questioned briefly during the original investigation as part of the routine canvassing of mine employees who knew Robert Martinez. Nothing in that interview had flagged him as suspicious. He reported being home with his wife the night of the disappearance, an alibi that was never thoroughly checked. What the original investigators didn't know, but modern database searches revealed, was Keller's history before arriving in Pike County. He had been questioned in connection with the disappearance of a young woman in Tennessee in 1969, though never charged. He had also been arrested for assault in Mississippi in 1971, but the charges were dropped when the victim refused to testify. Most damning of all was the discovery that Keller had been a regular customer at Murphy's Diner, often sitting in the section served by the Martinez twins. Several former employees, re-questioned in 2019, remembered that he had shown particular interest in Sarah, asking about her schedule and attempting to engage her in conversation, attention she had politely but firmly rejected. The picture that emerged was of a man with a fixation on Sarah Martinez, Agent Reeves said. When she rejected his advances, that rejection, combined with his history of violence toward women, likely triggered the attack. This breakthrough came after many years of silence. Hit the like button if you believe cold cases deserve more attention. Every case deserves resolution, no matter how much time has passed. Howard Keller had lived in plain sight for 45 years. At 80 years old in 2019, he had long since retired from Blackwell mining, spending his later career as a maintenance supervisor at Pike County High School until 2004. He lived in the same modest ranch house on Maple Street he'd purchased in 1973, just 6 blocks from where the Martinez family had lived. His lawn was always perfectly maintained, his garbage cans brought in promptly after collection, his Christmas lights displayed with geometric precision each December. To his neighbors, Keller was the typical quiet elderly widower, his wife Elaine having passed away from cancer in 2001. He attended the First Baptist Church most Sundays, volunteered occasionally at the local food bank, and was known to fix appliances for neighbors free of charge. His only apparent quirk was his intense privacy. He rarely invited anyone into his home and declined most social invitations with polite but firm refusals. He was just part of the background of the town, said Eleanor Wilkins, who had lived across the street from Keller for over 30 years, the kind of neighbor who waves from the driveway but doesn't stop to chat. Nothing about him ever raised any red flags. What no one in Pike County realized was that Howard Keller had been hiding in plain sight, carrying the secret of the Martinez twins' fate, while participating in the very community their disappearance had traumatized. The arrest came at dawn on October 25, 2019, 13 days after the discovery at Blackwell Mine. A tactical team from the Alabama Bureau of Investigation surrounded Keller's home while he slept, using a loudspeaker to order him outside. Neighbors described their shock at seeing the elderly man come out in his bathrobe, hands raised as officers in tactical gear secured him and placed him in an unmarked vehicle. By noon, news of the arrest had spread throughout Pike County like wildfire. The sheriff's department called a press conference for 3 p.m., but well before the official announcement, social media was on fire with speculation and disbelief. Many residents initially assumed there must be some mistake. Howard Keller seemed too ordinary, too integrated into the community to be responsible for the county's most notorious crime. Sheriff James Wilson, flanked by FBI representatives and the district attorney, confirmed what many found difficult to believe. Howard Keller had been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Sarah and Rebecca Martinez. The community's reaction was immediate and strong. It was like a collective gut punch, described Troy Messenger. Editor Patricia Simmons. Everyone had their theories about the Martinez case. Drifters passing through, serial killers, even supernatural explanations. No one imagined it could be someone who'd been among us all along. Someone who taught our children Sunday school classes and fixed our lawnmowers. The arrest sparked painful self-examination throughout Pike County. How had Keller avoided suspicion for nearly half a century? Why had no one connected the dots? The answers revealed both the limitations of 1970s investigative techniques and the sneaky way predators can blend into their communities. In 1974, Howard Keller had presented as the ideal alibi witness. His wife, Elaine, had confirmed he was home the night of the disappearance, stating they had watched television together until bedtime. Investigators, overwhelmed with leads and lacking resources to check every alibi, had accepted this statement at face value. What they couldn't know was that Elaine Keller, according to evidence discovered in 2019, had been a victim of domestic abuse who lived in fear of her husband. Journals found hidden in the attic of Keller's home during the 2019 search revealed Elaine's private suffering. In entries spanning many years, she documented her husband's controlling behavior, violent outbursts, and most critically, his unexplained absence on the night of October 17, 1974. She had lied to investigators out of fear, a decision that haunted her until her death. "I carry the weight of my silence," she wrote in a 2000 entry, shortly before her cancer diagnosis. "Two young women are gone because I was too afraid to speak. Their mother waits by the window while I live with the monster who took her daughters." Elaine never found the courage to come forward during her lifetime, but her hidden writings became crucial evidence against her husband after her death. Keller's employment at Blackwell Mining provided both motive and opportunity. As a maintenance supervisor, he had access to all areas of the mine, including the abandoned tunnel where the twins were hidden. His work schedule showed he had conducted a safety inspection of that section of the mine on October 18, 1974, the day after the disappearance, giving him the perfect opportunity to hide the bodies. Most disturbing was the evidence that Keller had continued to insert himself into the case over the years. Records showed he had attended multiple candlelight gatherings for the Martinez twins. A photograph from the Troy Messenger archives dated October 1979 showed Keller standing in the background during the 5-year anniversary memorial service. Former colleagues remembered him discussing the case occasionally, always expressing sympathy for the family while suggesting the investigation was looking in the wrong direction. He would say things like, "They'll never find those girls looking where they're looking," remembered Frank Dawson, who had worked with Keller at the high school. "We all thought he was just playing detective like everyone else in town. No one imagined he was practically confessing." The search of Keller's home produced the physical evidence needed to secure an indictment. In a locked metal box in his garage, investigators found a silver charm that matched the design of Sarah Martinez's necklace. DNA analysis confirmed microscopic blood residue on the charm belonged to Sarah. Also in the box was a blue hair ribbon identical to those the twins often wore, this one containing strands of hair that matched Rebecca's DNA profile. Most incriminating was a maintenance log from Blackwell Mining, apparently stolen from company records, documenting the sealing of the tunnel in March 1974. Keller had written notes in the margins with calculations of depth and accessibility, suggesting he had identified this location as a hiding place months before the actual murders. The forensic evidence, combined with Elaine's journals and Keller's documented history of fixation on Sarah Martinez, created a compelling case. But it was modern technology applied to old evidence that provided the final, irrefutable link between Keller and the crime. The blue Ford pickup truck that witnesses had reported seeing near Henderson's pharmacy the night of the disappearance had been sold by Keller in 1975. Investigators in 2019 managed to track down the vehicle, now owned by a collector of vintage trucks in Georgia. Although the truck had been repainted and restored multiple times over the many years, forensic technicians using advanced chemical analysis discovered microscopic traces of blood in crevices beneath the passenger seat frame, blood that DNA testing confirmed belonged to both Martinez twins. This evidence suggested the sisters had been transported in Keller's truck after being attacked, likely knocked unconscious or already deceased. The blood pattern indicated they had been placed on the passenger side floorboard, explaining why no one had reported seeing them in the vehicle. The arrest of Howard Keller forced Pike County to confront uncomfortable truths about community vigilance and the limitations of human perception. Here was a man who had lived among them for many years, participating in community life while hiding unimaginable secrets. He had watched Robert Martinez search tirelessly for his daughters, knowing exactly where they were hidden.
He had observed Maria Martinez's daily vigil by the window,
aware that her wait was in vain. The most terrifying aspect is how ordinary he seemed, noted Dr. Elizabeth Chambers, a criminal psychologist who consulted on the case. "We want to believe we can identify dangerous individuals, that they somehow look or act differently. Howard Keller reminds us that the most effective predators are those who appear completely unremarkable." For the Martinez family, the arrest brought a complex mix of emotions. Robert Martinez, now 87 and in failing health, was wheeled into the courtroom for Keller's arraignment, locking eyes with his daughter's alleged killer for the first time. Maria, 85, refused to attend, stating through her daughter Lucia that she couldn't bear to be in the same room as the devil who took my girls. Miguel Martinez flew in from California, facing for the first time the community he had left many years earlier. In a brief statement to the press, he expressed gratitude to Deputy Tanner for his discovery and to the forensic teams for their hard work, but noted, There is no arrest, no conviction, no punishment that can restore what was taken from us. Justice delayed this long is justice diminished. The community's reaction to Keller's arrest evolved from initial shock to collective soul-searching. Town hall meetings were organized to discuss how such a crime could go unsolved for so long, with the person responsible living openly among them. The Pike County Historical Society established a scholarship in the Martinez twins' names, dedicated to supporting students pursuing careers in forensic science and cold case investigation. Perhaps most touching was the spontaneous memorial that appeared outside Keller's now empty house. Photographs of Sarah and Rebecca, candles, flowers, and handwritten notes of apology from community members who felt they should have somehow known, should have seen something, should have prevented 45 years of injustice. The trial of Howard Keller began in March 2020, just as the world was dealing with the start of a global pandemic. Court proceedings were modified with social distancing measures, but Pike County officials were determined to move forward without delay. After 45 years of waiting, the Martinez family deserved resolution. The prosecution presented a methodical case, building a timeline that connected Keller to the twins' disappearance through both physical evidence and witness testimony. Former Murphy's Diner employees testified about Keller's frequent visits and his particular interest in Sarah. Forensic experts explained how modern technology had revealed evidence overlooked in 1974. The defense, recognizing the overwhelming evidence, focused primarily on Keller's age and health, arguing that prison would be unnecessarily cruel for an 80-year-old man. Keller himself remained emotionless throughout the proceedings, showing no visible emotion even when confronted with the most damning evidence. He declined to testify in his own defense and offered no statement when given the opportunity before sentencing. After just 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with unanimous guilty verdicts on both counts of first-degree murder. Judge Eleanor Simmons sentenced Keller to 2 consecutive life terms without possibility of parole, noting that while his advanced age meant he would likely die in prison regardless, the consecutive sentences symbolically acknowledged the separate value of each young life he had taken. No passage of time diminishes the gravity of this crime, Judge Simmons stated during sentencing. 2 promising lives were cut short. A family was shattered. A community lost its sense of security. Justice may have been delayed, but it will not be denied. For the Martinez family, the conviction brought closure, but not comfort. Robert Martinez, who had dedicated his life to finding his daughters, lived just long enough to see their killer brought to justice. He passed away peacefully in his sleep 2 weeks after the sentencing, having fulfilled his promise to Sarah and Rebecca, Maria Martinez, upon hearing the verdict, finally allowed her daughter's bedroom to be packed up. The clothes they would never wear again, the books they would never finish reading, the dreams they would never fulfill, all carefully preserved for 45 years, were donated to a women's shelter in Troy. Maria kept only a few treasured photographs and Rebecca's guitar, which now hangs on the wall of the living room, where she still sits each evening, no longer waiting but remembering. Miguel and Lucia Martinez established a foundation in their sisters' names, dedicated to supporting cold case investigations across Alabama. The foundation provides grants for advanced forensic testing and specialized training for rural law enforcement agencies, ensuring that other families might find answers sooner than they did. The Martinez case has become a model for cold case investigations nationwide. Law enforcement agencies have studied how modern technology applied to preserved evidence can solve cases that are many years old. The case is now included in FBI training materials, highlighting both the investigative failures of 1974 and the persistent determination that eventually brought resolution. In Pike County, the case has transformed community awareness. A volunteer citizens group now works with local police to maintain a database of unsolved crimes and missing persons cases. Annual training sessions teach residents how to be more observant and engaged neighbors. The high school curriculum includes a unit on community safety and the importance of reporting suspicious behavior regardless of who is involved. Howard Keller died in prison in January 2022, taking to his grave the full truth of what happened that October night in 1974. He never expressed remorse, never offered an explanation, never provided the Martinez family with answers to their lingering questions. Yet even in his silence, justice was served. This case proves justice can come even after 45 years. Make sure you subscribe, Hit the notification bell and share this video with someone who appreciates true crime stories. Your support helps bring attention to cases that might otherwise be forgotten. What cold case do you think deserves more attention? Comment below. Every unsolved case represents a family still waiting for answers, still hoping for the closure that finally came to the Martinez family after nearly half a century of searching.